There.
This meeting is being recorded.
Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today on Living Mythology, I'm proud to bring you retro sci-fi cinema with the one, the only Brian Walker of Brian's Drive-In Theater. Greetings and welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Hercules. How are you this evening?
I'm doing exceptionally awesome, and I'm looking forward to proceeding into Summer Vacation Horror Part 2.
Yeah, and you know what, Hercules? I just got back from summer vacation just a few days ago. We were on the road for 2 weeks. We took our smallest car. We took the convertible. It also gets the worst gas mileage, which is kind of funny. And it packed way too much stuff in it and headed you into the Midwest. And one of the things that we did was, this is going to sound bizarre, but I've wanted to do it for a long time, ever since I'd heard of it. We went to the Early Television Museum in Hilliard, Ohio, which is a suburb of Columbus. And we just stopped by on a Saturday morning. It blew my mind. It was just amazing. There were television now is about 100 years old. I think it was invented in 1922. That sticks out in my mind. I think that was when the first transmission of image from one from one area to another occurred. I think it was 1922. So there's a lot of that early television equipment there. I mean, old picture. You remember picture tubes, right? There's big things. They don't need them now, but it was a thing, back in the day. And they have some from the 1920s and 1930s, and they're odd looking because they're very experimental and not particularly well made, but they're not supposed to be, and they've got British televisions from the 1930s because Great Britain, had a publicly funded television station starting in 1936. So there were a lot of there was a whole room of early British televisions from the late 1930s. And there was another room of American televisions from the late 30s and early 40s. And to tell you the truth, if you put one against another, you couldn't discern that there was no difference in styling or construction. They all were very stylish. I mean, the 1930s, there's all that Art Deco influence and Bauhaus and all that. So some of these things are just beautiful. I mean, the cabinets are gorgeous, but the televisions themselves are a little more than experimental. They're a little crude, but very interesting to see and take a look at. There was a 1950s color television room. We were there for like 2 hours. I took dozens of pictures too. In the 1950s color TV room, color was very experimental. In the late 40s and early 50s, RCA eventually came up with the color television that we knew when we were kids. They came up with that system, which is the foundation of even the flat panels today. It's still the same basic system. But anyway, there were a lot of their stuff is working, and the stuff that the televisions they have at that museum that aren't working, they are working on to try to make them work. So they're having to recreate picture tubes and find. You remember how long it used to take the family television to warm up before you got a picture? You'd switch it on, and then you just sort of put your thumbs until you began to get an image. Well, we were in the museum, and I'd kind of forgotten about all that, to tell you the truth. We were in the museum, and I pushed the button so you could see the color TV. And I'm sitting there, tapping my toe. I'm like, dang, this thing isn't working. And then I turned away from it, and Greg said, "Oh, it's on." It's like 2 minutes later, and I looked, and it was a 1954. I can't remember the brand. It might have been an RCA for that matter. It was a 1954 model color television, and they were running The Wizard of Oz on it. And it looked like TV used to look like, you know how it was lots of shadows.
And grainy,
Uh,
yeah.
colors were just suggestions, you know. they didn't always look real crisp or real bright. That's exactly what they looked like. It was like going back home, you know, in a way. It was just so much fun. And then the style of some of the 50s TVs are just amazing. When I was a kid, my parents had an old television, one of those little compact televisions, you know, a
Mhm.
small one, in their bedroom, and it had fins. You know, I guess it was from the late 50s or so. And that was old, you know, even when I was a kid. And they had stuff like that. They had the beautiful German television from the early 60s that's just a series of angles, and it's a stunning piece of furniture. I don't know if it's a great TV or not, but it was so much fun to see it. I saw a lot of mid-century America. You do if you go into the Midwest. And the early television museum was just a blast. I had such a good time. In fact, the vacation was awesome. I can't think of one negative thing that happened. I love the Great Lakes, though. And you do see a lot of vestiges of what we remember, you know, from our childhoods in the 50s, 60s, 70s. We had a lot of antique malls, and I was shocked by, you know, the number of pieces of movie memorabilia that were, you know, 50s to 70s. It was quite a bit of it.
I remember having antennas on top of the TVs and then using aluminum foil and hangers. You could kind of like jury rig it to get better reception. Those are unsightly.
Well, you know, when we were at the early television museum, Greg was reminiscing because they had a collection of like old television antennas and things, which was interesting but odd to look at the same time. And he was saying that when he was a kid, they would do the same thing with aluminum foil. We didn't, because my dad was, among other things, an electrician. So we always had, you know, this really complicated antenna mounted on the roof, and we had a rotor on it as well. So you had to be in the living room to dial the station in. But you know, if it was from something farther away, you just pushed the button on the rotor, and then that turned the antenna.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so it was cool when it worked. In the winter, it would freeze, and then wherever it froze, that's what you saw. You know,
Yeah.
from December to March, you know, pretty much. But there was one direction that it worked in most often. You had to be you really goofing around with it to get it kind of away from that. It was flat up there anyway, so you can get your reception like crazy.
And I remember back then, too, radio was more than it is currently
Much
until
more.
terrestrial radio. And there were all sorts of
Mhm.
shows that I used to listen to on the radio and other things I'd watch on TV. We had black and white for the longest time. I don't think we got color till maybe like the mid 60s. So it was your imagination that provided the color to whatever it was that you were seeing.
Well, you know, the first television that I had in my bedroom when I was a kid was black and white. You know, it was a 60s set. The screen might have been, I don't know, 12 inches or so. It was small. And I really shouldn't call it black and white because it was light gray and dark gray. Might be a better way to put it. You know, there wasn't a whole lot of contrast, and it had its own rabbit ears built in to it.
So very
But
advanced.
all I could get with the built-in rabbit ears was our local PBS station. You couldn't get like the mainstream ABC, NBC, CBS, or any of the independents. All I could get was public broadcasting. And ironically, I did watch a fair number of PBS shows when I was a
Mhm.
kid,
Me too.
interestingly. And that's probably wise. You know, if I didn't want to, you know, sit in the living room and watch something, I could always go into my bedroom and watch something incredibly boring, or you know, some very wholesome children's show.
Did you get UHF where you were?
Oh yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
Well,
those were all the
yeah,
local stations.
and the independent, yeah, the independent stuff.
Yeah,
And some of those had some great syndication
yes,
packages.
yeah, they
Like
did.
the one that we watched when I was a kid back in the 70s just ran like on Saturdays and Sundays. They just ran terrible movies. You know, I don't know which syndication package they bought, but it didn't cost them a whole lot. But and it just fascinated me because they would run like Euro spy movies, spaghetti westerns,
And Sword and Sandal.
Ed Wood movies. They did run a lot of sword and sandal. You're right. Just a little bit of lots of adventure, movies, a little bit of everything. Um, and I sure do miss stuff like that because they programmed it all for you. It made it kind of easy, and it was stuff that back then, pre VCR, you were never going to see, otherwise. So if you watch those fringe channels, you did get the fringe entertainment, and I that was kind of a wonderful time. But it's a shame we don't. I mean, we have access to much more now, but it just seemed more fun back then.
Yes, it did. I remember the PBS in New York City when I lived at the time. They had nudity like after 10 o'clock p.m.
Yes.
There was nudity, there was cursing, there were all sorts of adult situations.
Mhm.
And I remember once we kids discovered that, we it should turn on the TV.
Well, it was educational, Hercules. Where else are we going to learn that stuff, on the street?
And like the early days of cable, when cable finally came, some of the shows I remember were like beyond, beyond description in retrospect.
It more or less just Benny Hill, but with actual naked people. Yeah, I remember stuff like that too. And not titillating in the slightest.
No.
No, it was supposed to be. It was like, it's funny, but it misses the mark. Yeah. After 10 p.m. on our local television station, they would run like Monty Python and things like that, and that they could swear more, than we could. And occasionally you would see a breast or something like that. On it was just it was shocking back then as a child, because you never saw or heard anything like that on television, and you turn it on to your your public channel. Whoa. I'm sure it helped viewership.
I think so too. And now it seems that every time a terrain gets civilized, in the broadband or whatever wave these things, because I'm noticing it even on YouTube. YouTube had all sorts of wild stuff on YouTube, and now it seems like they're clamping down on the Wild Wild West type of, create content stage, and it's increasingly difficult to watch things on YouTube. They're even censoring certain types of subject matter that you can't see videos on, or videos have to bleep certain words, and some of them seem innocuous to me. I don't know why you'd have to bleep them, but it's very interesting. I remember this happening on cable. I remember it happening with the local stations. That it seemed once they were there, once they had content, and once they'd hooked up to whatever source they needed to hook up to, they would start getting more restrictive in terms of the programming that was allowed on their station.
And that's the beginning of the end for them. Something, because when it starts getting restrictive, people are going to start going around it, and then there will be a new platform.
Yes.
So screw you, Google. Well, it's them. That's who it is.
But onward, and we'll always find.
Not to get hit with the lightning bolt from the Google gods.
No, Zeus is watching over you, so you're okay from lightning.
I hope so. Anyway, tonight, when I was out traveling over the last few weeks, like I said, had a great time. Ate too much, probably drank too much, got way too much sun, but that's what vacation's all about.
Yes.
And you know, there's a lot of roadside America in that area, a lot of drive-ins in through that stretch between here and the Great Lakes. Ohio, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan have a fair number of drive-ins, and by and large, they're in pretty good shape and very well attended. They often sell out, especially on weekend nights. And they will, the ones here, like the one in Brownsville, which is about a 45-minute or 50-minute drive from here in Brownsville, Pennsylvania, routinely will, on Friday and Saturday nights, they will post on their Facebook page 2 hours before they start that they're sold out.
Oh, wow.
Mhm. So it's fun to see stuff like that still alive, because in your state, I don't think there's one drive-in left. I don't think New Jersey has any anymore, does it?
If we do, they're very few and far between. Pennsylvania had quite a bit within driving distance.
Pennsylvania has the most existing drive-ins. For some reason, they've hung on in PA where they haven't hung on anywhere else. Sadly, you know, that one of the ones, I think I've mentioned this before, but the one closest to me, which is in Carmichael, Pennsylvania, it was open last summer, but the owners, a husband and wife, a couple, got COVID and died back in October.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And there's the place, I mean, we've been to some car shows there and such. We hadn't been to the actual drive-in for a movie there in a long time, but we had been there last summer for a car show, which was a lot of fun. But I could see that there was a lot of deferred maintenance around. It needed some work, you know. And a lot of these old drive-ins have projectors that are decades old. And I've noticed on social media that some of the older drive-ins are having trouble keeping their projectors running, because it's just, you know, gears wear out. Those light bulbs have to be hard to find and horribly expensive, you know, to project like that. And like I said, probably very hard to find, you know, parts. I'm sure stuff has to be made for them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good. It was good old quality equipment. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, except that it's just, it's a Havana taxi cab, you know, at this point. You know, a lot of that stuff's old. And converting to digital, which can be your salvation, also means, you know, buying $100,000 worth of equipment or more.
Yeah.
You know, that's prohibitively expensive when you can only be open for like 4 or 5 months out of the year. You know, in theory, I know that there are drive-ins, even drive-ins in Michigan, that are open year round. The Ford Theater in Dearborn, and Greg and I were in Dearborn about a week and a half ago. We went to the Henry Ford Museum, and that's where the Ford Theater is. It's the largest drive-in in the U.S. I think they can park something like 3,000 cars, which is kind of astounding if you think about it. You know? Now they have multiple screens, so they don't have like 3,000 cars aimed at one, you know, massive screen or anything like that. But it's a really nice drive-in. It's kind of something to see, you know, of that scale. We have a couple of big ones in this area too. And this area borders a lot of rural areas. The only game in town in this area is Pittsburgh, you know, really. Everything else is either smaller metro area or rural. And I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of those drive-ins did survive in this general area, is that it does serve the rural population, and it does give you something to do in the summer.
Yes. And drive-ins are always been the center of nightlife for very many people. And as you pointed out before, sometimes there are restaurants you can eat there during the day. I know in Pennsylvania there were flea markets at the drive-ins, and
yes, we
so
do that here too.
Other stuff going on too.
Mm-hmm. And you know, the food. I mean, it's, there've been a couple in this area that when COVID first hit, they were open during the day as a restaurant, and in the evening they would be open, you know, for the theater itself. And some of them had devised systems where you would order whatever you wanted via an app, and somebody would bring it to you.
Oh, wow.
So you did, so there weren't congregations of people, in the early days of COVID, which I thought was really smart, and looked like to me that drive-ins were going to, kind of make a comeback. But I've been noticing lately that a few of them are starting to fall again. So a lot of it's the property itself. There's acres and acres of property that you can put crappy townhomes on, or turn into a supermarket or something like that. That's eating up drive-ins in larger metro areas. It's just the space, it's all that, undeveloped and generally flat land, which is in this part of the country is really hard to come by.
One of my recent guests on the show, and I'm trying to recall which one specifically, but they were saying that one of the things that COVID brought, a gift that COVID brought, was the drive-in theater. That all of a sudden you can drive in again, and that they're grateful to it. And they hope that the craze lasts past the epidemic, because they were able to reconnect with that and remember how joyous it was, a part of their growing up. And now here they were, back in the drive-in again.
It was a lot of fun. And when I was preparing for tonight, one of the movies that popped out at me was a movie called Race with the Devil. And it's a, summer vacation drive-in horror flick. As a matter of fact, when I saw it at the drive-in with my parents. It stars Loretta Swit from MASH, Warren Oates, who was a great character actor, and appeared in, I wish I had a picture, I wish I had a page for him, but I don't. Peter Fonda, of course, I guess he was probably the big star of the movie. And Laura Parker, who used to be on Dark Shadows.
Dark Shadows, yes.
Yeah. And she worked off and on, but it's just kind of fun to see her in a movie, as opposed to a soap opera. And it's a really fun movie, and it kind of mirrors some of my fears of the South. Well, it does. Although I don't really consider Texas the South. That's really kind of Southwest. That's a little different. But they're two married couples, and they've decided to take a trip from Texas to Colorado. And Colorado is a great destination for a trip. And they're in an RV. They're in this big Winnebago. And they witness a murder. And it turns out that that's too many spoilers. I'll have to let some of this slide. I can't describe it too much. But anyway, since they've witnessed the murder, they're kind of on the run, and that's the rest of the movie essentially is what happens to them because they've witnessed a murder committed by several people. So I won't spoil any more of it than that, but
okay,
it's a lot of fun, and it does take that idyllic, we're going on vacation, isn't this wonderful, and turning it into something really horrible. I like that juxtaposition. Fortunately, I did not have that on my vacation. Nothing horrible happened at all. Quite the opposite. I don't want that to happen to me personally, but I love it in a film. And Jaws is sort of the same thing. Did not see Jaws at the theater. No, that's not true. I didn't see Jaws at the drive-in theater. As I recall, and I'm pretty sure my memory serves me correct, I was only about 9 or 10 years old. I think that my dad had to buy tickets in advance for us to see Jaws, because we didn't live in a big metro area. We lived in a smaller city, and I think only one theater in town was running. And it was an old 1930s one-screen theater. And the movie was so popular that summer that indeed we had to buy tickets. So you bought tickets for, let's say, June 8th at 4:30 p.m. or something like that. You had to actually schedule it. And we do things like that now, but back then that was, it was close to 50 years ago. And that was, whoa, this. And what it really was is that only one theater in town, for whatever reason, was allowed to show the movie, and it wasn't a very big theater. So, and since it was the summer blockbuster of 1975, you just had to line up to go see it.
I remember my reaction to Jaws because I liked swimming, and when Jaws came out, nobody wanted to go in the water, so people on the beach, nobody in the water. And if you tried to make it to the water, many well-intentioned people would warn you that there might be a shark somewhere, and so yeah, this
See,
was
this
really,
is why you need to go to the Great Lakes. You don't have to worry about sharks.
except that there are rumors of freshwater sharks and all sorts of things like that.
Well, I mean, I saw an article once on the news the other day about just that.
There you go. So I remember I went to the fish store where they sold fish to eat, and I saw that there were shark steaks. So I bought shark steaks, and while all this panic was going on about swimming, I ate shark steaks. So that was my reaction to Jaws. I finally saw it. I enjoyed it, and after that, the scare had passed until the sequel came out, and the people were swimming again.
But remember how effective that movie was, because it really wasn't like anything that you'd seen before, right?
Right.
Okay. And seeing it for the first time, it did just sort of knock your socks off. The cinematography in it's really, really good. It didn't just happen. I mean, somebody really planned how it was going to be shot, and I mean, it's it's at the next level. I mean, it's really well photographed,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that makes a huge difference in any movie. But the way the colors are used, at night and sunset and during the day, it's just beautifully shot. Now the story itself's awesome. It was a fun page turner, paperback book.
Mm-hmm.
But the movie really just kind of blew everybody away. The shark, the contraption itself, the puppet,
Mm-hmm.
looks fantastic on screen. But if you go back and do any research, apparently using this animatronic thing was a nightmare. It didn't work very well, if at all. And I think that hints at how well it was photographed, because it does look good on screen. We saw it. I think we have a Blu-ray copy of it. But we went with some friends a few years ago and saw it on the big screen because I think Fathom Events brought it back into theaters for like one or two showings or something like that. And our local theater was pretty packed. I was impressed to see how many people know that movie. And remember, it's nearly 50 years old. That's
Yes.
1975. That's 47 years ago. And there was a lot of marketing around the movie too. I don't know if it still exists or not, but I had a Jaws T-shirt, that I wore as a kid. I think I got it that summer. I also had this plastic game, and I've seen it I'm sure it's at my mother's house somewhere. And I've seen it in some antique malls and things like that. It's a giant shark. It's
Yes.
got the sharp teeth, and the mouth opens, and it's rubber band spring loaded. And you put garbage. I'm not kidding. Like old rubber tires and things
I
like
had
that.
that too. Yes.
And then you pull it out. You pull out the garbage one by one until it gets so light that the jaws clamp shut, and then you lose the game. I loved it as a kid, and Greg had never seen anything like that before, and I think it fascinated him. And then when he learned that I've got one somewhere, he didn't buy the one that we saw at the antique mall. He's a big shark fan. He has all kinds of, I don't know why, but he has all kinds of shark shirts, shark memorabilia.
I used to have
everybody's got to have a hobby
too, and I used to have the game, and since the New York Aquarium wasn't that far away, I've been frequenting that, so I got more shark stuff, and I was eating shark steaks, so all was good.
But I mean, that movie really, for me, well, if you look back, it sort of ushered in that summer blockbuster movie. Now this year, I don't know what is the summer blockbuster movie. Is it the Elvis movie, or no? It would have been Top Gun Maverick, wouldn't it? Yeah, that's what it would have been, because that was really popular there for a while. I didn't see it.
I didn't see it either.
No. I mean, I seemed to be. I read very positive reviews. of it. And I probably will see it, at some point. But I haven't been to the theater this year, which is a shame.
Athena and I started going back to MCU movies. So we saw Thor, Love and Thunder. Before then, we saw Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. Before then, we saw Spider-Man, No Way Home. And that's about it. We started going back with Spider-Man. So we saw those three in the movie. So and we make that our date night. So we go out and eat, have a good time and watch a movie.
Well, that does sound appealing. Maybe I'll have to do something like that before the fall semester begins again. Anyway, those, for some reason, that both of those movies remind me of summer. I mean, obviously, Jaws takes place
In the summer.
Yeah, at a small beach town, and I stayed at two different small beach towns on my vacation, and they really are just idyllic places. They're, if you're from the city, or if you just want to get away from the city, they're fantastic places to go. They're very laid back. Aren't that many people there, but there's enough. There's enough to do. Food is usually very good.
Jaws went from starting a craze like of shark movies, mostly Jaws sequels, but there were other ones. And I think it peaked like in Megalodon, which was like a prehistoric giant shark. And now sharks have become kind of like psychopomps into the bizarre. And you have like Sharknado and Sharkzilla.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
I loved Sharknado. It was so stupid, but I loved it so much. Whoever did it knew how to make a parody. Now the subsequent ones, you beat a horse to death.
Yeah.
But the first one was really well done. I appreciated it a lot. Are you a The Hills Have Eyes fan?
I enjoyed it when I was a kid and I saw it, or when I was younger and I saw it. And I think I saw the remake, and there were a couple of chapters.
I did not see the remake. You know me, the original is the best. So yes. I did not see the remake. But I love the original. I'm a big Wes Craven fan. So, and I love the original, and I don't think you can do better than Wes Craven. And Michael Berryman's in it, and he's scary looking. Let's face it. And I mean, couldn't be better cast in the film. And if you don't quite remember the movie so much, it's just this family going on a camping trip, and they have an accident in the middle of the desert, and their father has to go out for help. They're towing a travel trailer. And these people come out of the mountains and want to eat them. So I think it's a brilliant movie. I love the plot.
Yeah, me too. It was a fun movie, and that started a whole genre too of like.
Oh yes, it did.
Cannibal Hillbillies, or radioactive mutant cannibal hillbillies, or medical experimented upon cannibal hillbillies.
Yes, and I love the movie. It's really violent too. Violence in movies never had much of a reaction to, and as I get older, I'm starting to have a reaction to it.
In what way?
It just you see so much ugliness anyway, and it's just, do I need to watch more of it as entertainment? I'm having trouble with it right now.
I can understand that, honestly. I've asked myself the same question with my sword and sandal movies. They've always inspired me to work out, inspired me to aim to be heroic. But lately it's like, do I really want to inspire myself by watching people hit other people with fake swords and sticks? And so I've been going through that too, and with the horror movies too. So if the horror is unnecessary too, it's been bothering me.
Well, a lot of horror is based in violence. It doesn't have to be, but well, yeah, it actually does have to have an element of violence now that I think about it. Otherwise, why would it not be scared? Okay, that was a dumb thing to say. Yeah, I guess it does have to have some violence to it. It all depends on how it's doled out. If it's like Saw, where it's just straight up, it's just an autopsy, on film. Eh, it's not really scaring me. You've got to have some plot. You got to have something moving the plot along. You have to have an antagonist who is just as creepy as all get out. Michael Perryman. You've got to. You do have to have. There's some finesse to horror. You have to do a good job with it, and I do admire. Like I said, with Jaws and cinematography, it is just beautifully shot. And I think that's one of the things that really sucks you in too. Is just how wonderful it looks, even today, with what we would now call as crude special effects. That looks fantastic on my television or the big screen for that matter.
Yeah, some of the special effects in the early horror, because they had limitations, they were very creative in their use of shadow and
Very.
and other things, and that made it really creepy and scary in many cases, or leaving it to your imagination as to what exactly happens a second after they cut from the shot.
Yeah, and if you change the angle of the shot and then edit,
Mm-hmm.
to show a different perspective, you can get away with not great props, and make it look really good, and they did. I don't know how. I've seen still photos of the shark, and I think it looks authentic. I guess it's the movement of it that they were really trying to replicate more than anything else. But I think they did a fantastic job with it.
Recently, I came across a movie that I'd seen years ago, and I really liked this movie because it was ultra low budget, but it was very clever in how they wrote it and filmed it. And again, you could tell it's an ultra low budget film. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Psychos in Love.
I don't think so, but the title sounds familiar.
It's about a psycho killer who falls in love with another psycho killer. So then,
I like the plot premise.
It's on YouTube, the entire movie now. Psychos in Love, and it's like a small handful of characters, but it's very cleverly written. Anyway, it follows the male psycho killer, and then he goes on a date, and he tells his date there's something he needs to tell her. He's never told this to anyone before, but he's not going to kill her. And then he's a psycho killer. And she's like shocked, just really, me too. And so then it follows their relationship, and in many ways it's like a normal relationship. It goes through what normal relationships go through, except to the nth degree, because they're both psycho killers. So again, they had nothing, and they had lemons, and they made lemonade with it. And I admired it. It's a pleasant movie, and it held up after decades of not having seen it.
Oh, do you know roughly what vintage it is?
To be honest with you, no. I would guess in the 80s, maybe.
And what did you say? Psycho Killers in Love? Is that what you said it was called?
Psychos in Love. Psychos in Love.
1987.
Oh, it's an 87. Okay, it's later than it was.
I have not heard of this. It gets respectable reviews though.
Because it's clever, and it's genuinely funny at times, and they do things you'd never expect for them to do. It's like a slasher comedy movie that's very effective.
It looks interesting, and like I said, I love the premise for it. I mean, it's a great plot motivator to have two serial killers fall in love with each other.
And they break the fourth wall a lot, especially toward the latter half of the movie.
Mm. Yeah, you'd almost have to if it's effective. Yeah, you almost have to. And that's always fun. I'm going to have to check that one out. It really sounds interesting. A movie that we had on tonight before we met via Zoom that I love and I hadn't seen for a while is Piranha. It's the original one, the late 70s low budget one, 1978, with Bradford Dillman, who is the alcoholic protagonist in the movie. Heather Menzies is his love interest, and she did a lot of 1970s, all kinds of 1970s horror films. She was married to Robert Urich from, what was that show called, Vegas? And she sadly passed away a few years ago. She didn't get to live her 10, unfortunately. Neither did he, which is very sad. Kevin McCarthy, who lived to be close to 100 years old, is in it and does a great job. I mean, he tends to chew on the scenery, but that's why you hire him. So he's fantastic. Keenan Wynn is in it and is really good. And one of my old horror favorites that you wouldn't expect to turn up in a late 70s American drive-in movie is Barbara Steele, who made some fantastic Italian and German, well, mostly Italian horror films in the 1960s. Black Sunday is just incredible. Fantastic movie. Another movie that's very well photographed, thanks to its director, one of my favorite horror directors, Mario Bava. But she made some other really good films, and she's Barbara Steele's interesting because she isn't classically beautiful, by any means, but she's different looking, exotic might be a good way to put it, but no one else looks like Barbara Steele. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
She stands out, and she's got a huge cult of fans built around her. There are lots of Barbara Steele fans out there, and she was a great actor. She's a British actress, but a really good actress for horror films. I understand that she got kind of tired of the genre after a while, and if you want to move on and get into something better, I can understand why you might hate it, but boy, we fans sure love it. So
she comes up in conversation. She's among the top actresses that come up in conversations that happen around me when people are discussing television or the movies. She always comes up. She was on the Avengers, Miss Steele, I think she was called. Emma Peel, you mentioned it, yeah. So she
wasn't Emma Peel.
She wasn't Emma Peel?
Oh no. That was Diana Rigg.
Okay, so I'm confusing two different actresses. Okay, never mind.
Well, I mean, they're both British, and they were both fun to watch. I mean, Diana Rigg on the event. Well, Diana Rigg in anything, she was a terrific actress, and she passed away a couple of years ago, unfortunately. Barbara Steele, like I said, though, is still with us, and the interesting thing about Barbara Steele is that she never had. I mean, she starred in a lot of movies, but none of them were. I mean, no A pictures. If she was in a better production, she was not the star of it. But in some of those Italian horror movies where she is the star, it's just kind of amazing that she does have kind of name or brand recognition, however you want to put it in today's jargon. But it's kind of fascinating that her popularity is as it's as good as it ever was.
Yeah, they become our stars in the firmaments, just like in antiquity. In antiquity, if you became famous enough, you wound up in the heavens at night. And we still call them stars for much the same reason. We kind of look up to them and tell stories about them and so forth.
And it doesn't have to be the same five people currently in the media. You're right. It can be anybody. It can be somebody who might now be obscured to a certain segment of the population. But there's always going to be some sort of community out there that's cheering them on, that are fans. That's wonderful. We don't all need to like the same entity or the same person. We can all be fans of whatever we want to be fans of. Everything doesn't need to be homogenized like that, and unfortunately, you find in popular culture it does get homogenized. But thank goodness we have such access to anything now. I mean, that's one thing that really helps. And social media, I know it's got issues, but it does help bring communities of people together who do have a certain interest, and that can be a good thing.
Well, our Sword and Sandal cinema community,
very true.
Those are apart, all in total, excluding duplicate people like in multiple groups, it's over 25,000 people all over the world right now. It's great.
That's amazing.
You're talking to people you never talked to. Like we have fans in Iraq, we have fans in other places where I would normally not be speaking to anybody, and they're joined together in the love of these movies.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, like I've said on numerous occasions, horror and science fiction fans are the ones who really turn out for stuff, and they feel very strongly, about some of the performers, some of the series. They're your biggest support. They're where you make your money, and there's a lot of them. But everybody, even within horror, everybody has their certain genre that they like the best, or one that they don't particularly care for. I was going to say that I don't like overly violent films, but that's not true because I love slasher movies. So I'm going to have to figure out what I think about that. I guess. I guess if a slasher movie's done in style, I'm good with it. But if it's just cutting people up, it's like, come on, we need something to move the plot along.
I agree.
And if it's sick and twisted, even better. That makes it scary, or that makes it dirty. You know what I mean? That's what makes it fun. That's what gives you the reaction. You don't just want to sit there and it's like, oh, somebody else is getting killed.
I found this older that I changed too. I used to like even bad horror movies.
I love bad horror.
But now I'm finding that some of them are just not worth watching. So
too bad. yeah. Oh boy, there are.
Badness. Yeah, they're bad.
I've got to tell you, in trying to do the movie of the day, which I've been doing for like almost 2.5 years now, every day changing. I've had to edit out some of those creaky old ones. Some of them are just dull, just oh god. Either the sound, like some of the early 30s stuff, some of that was great, especially the Universal stuff, and some of the rest of it was just deathly dull. And for those, I've been trying to edit stuff like that out. I try to put something that's either good quality or so bad it's good. But if it's just bad, I've been trying to steer clear of those. Now, people might disagree with my taste too. Apparently, I can watch just about anything. But you're right. Some of those are just done for, or perhaps it's just that you've seen it one too many times and then it's just dead to you. I mean, that's happened to me with several films, some even types of music. I'm just kind of, I don't need to hear this again.
The dollar store actually led to this because all of a sudden tons of movies became available for $1 on DVD or Blu-ray. And so, of course, I had to watch everything that was in the genre, that I like. So the genres that died in that I no longer am willing to watch anything that's in the genre were the historical fantasy ones, the ones that are fantasy, obviously, but they're based on actual history, like with the
Mhm.
Vikings or the Celts or the medieval times. And the other one was certain horror films. It's just after all, you watch enough bad ones, it's like I'm wasting my breath and my attention. So I become more discriminating, and now I have like for movies that are suspect or that I can't find anything on them online to tell me what I could be expecting, I'll give them like 10-15 minutes. And if they don't grab me in the first 10-15 minutes, that's it. You know, they lost me. Whereas before, I patiently wait because sometimes they'll get you like toward the middle or toward the end.
See, I've kind of always been where you are right now. Especially with the horror film, if it doesn't reach out and grab you in the first 10 minutes or so, you're watching a dud.
Yeah.
There's got to be something in it that's watchable. Maybe it's an actor. Well, case in point, not that he didn't make bad movies, because he did make some. But if Vincent Price is in a movie, it's going to be watchable. No matter what the plot is, no matter how it's written, he's going to be able to pull it off. It'll be worth at least one view. But if it's somebody who can't act, or somebody you never heard of who can't act, and if the plot's bad, and if the writing's bad, and if nothing happens in it, meaning if it's a British horror movie, some of those, I shouldn't say that, because I love, we've done shows on how much I love old British horror from the 60s and 70s, but some of that stuff from the 30s, woo, well, it's a bit much to get through. Very talky,
One of the Vincent Price movies I could think of that fits your category is Mondo Balordo. And in fact, when I wrote a review for Mondo Balordo, I wrote that Vincent Price hosted, and it's well worth watching once. And I kept it,
and only because of him. Yeah.
Vincent Price in a very short, several minute segment on Hercules, the Hercules movie Hercules, and that's it. The rest of it, you watched it fine. Bye. I'm not going to watch this again, but it has Vincent Price and Hercules in it, so it'll sit on my shelf.
Well, we're running out of time, and there was one more movie that I wanted to talk about. I don't know if it's one you've seen. Have you ever seen a movie called Psycho Beach Party?
Yes, years ago. I don't remember much about it, but I know I've seen
Okay. It came out in the year 2000, and it was written by and also starring Charles Busch, who is I don't know how would I describe Charles Busch. I don't want to say female impersonator, because that sounds so 1950s. But he's an actor who occasionally acts as a man, but mostly acts. He takes on female roles. Well, let's put it that way. That's probably the easiest way to do it. I follow him on Facebook, and he's got some really interesting insights into entertainment and how you would just have to follow him, but really smart. Very intelligent man. But in Psycho Beach Party, he's actually a female police chief who is trying to investigate this series of murders in what looks to be Malibu, And Lauren Ambrose from 6 Feet Under, she's sort of the teen star in it. Kathleen Robertson has this great role as this extremely hateful paraplegic. And it's so funny, but it's a riot. If you like comedy and horror mixed together, watch Psycho Beach Party. And I like Charles Busch. Also did another movie several years after this one called Die Mommy Die.
Yes, I love that one.
It's a lot of fun, and there again, if it's a movie you haven't seen before, or if you haven't seen it since it came out, watch it again. It's brilliant, very funny.
So summers can be, and summer vacations can be wonderful, and fortunately you had a wonderful
I sure did.
And there's still more summer ahead, so you have a chance to have more. And it could also be terrifying in very horrifying and weird ways.
Well, the semester begins in about 4 weeks. So yes, yes, it's terrifying. I am so not ready for it.
So when you make movies, you can have like that can be the shark, the semester. And you hear every time the semester comes up in conversation.
Oh, it is, trust me.
Music. Doo, 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 doo.
I can see its dorsal fin now, trust me. It's coming.
Any last thoughts you'd like to leave people with, or any suggestions on which movies they should try to find?
Sure. I'm often not a big fan of remakes, but Piranha 3D is an exception. That came out in 2010. I actually saw it in the theater. It's Elizabeth Shue. Richard Dreyfuss is in it, which is really kind of a fun callback to Jaws. Ving Rhames is in it. Jerry O'Connell. It's a fun movie to watch, and it has its kind of horrific elements to it. It'll make you cringe here and there. I would definitely recommend that. I'm sure it's on any number of streaming services. I love the original 3D of seeing it in the theater. That's so hard to replicate at home, but in the theater, it's awesome. Another one that I don't think gets enough credit is Motel Hell. And it does make the rounds, but I don't think people get how truly scary it is. The first time I saw it, which I think was probably around when it came out in 1980, it kind of creeped me out. And because you saw little places like that, on the roadside, you always driving past them, you do wonder what horrific things are happening in them. You know what I mean? And Rory Calhoun, for whom I have a page on my website, who was a Western actor. He's the is he the protagonist or the antagonist? Both, I guess. He's the star, we'll put it that way. Nancy Parsons, who was famous for her role in Porky's. Paul Link from Chips is in it. Elaine Joyce from game shows and such, and Wolfman Jackson. And just a lot of fun. It's a great movie.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. And hi, Greg. I look forward to our next conversation. I'm going to be trying to evolve these shows a little bit in the months ahead, and I have some ideas of something we could figure out in the next couple of months, and just add a whole new dimension to the show. So expect to hear from me this week.
All right, sounds interesting.
Okay, be well, and thank you. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. We're not live. We're recorded, and hopefully, if all goes well, this show will be up by midnight tonight. Take care. Thank you.
Good night.